Everything began when she'd been chilling at home reading novels, when she stumbled across one where the characters shared the exact same names as her and her family. Driven by curiosity, she decided to dive into the story. It was all about a mix-up at birth, the true heiress being switched out for a fake one, and decades later, the rightful daughter makes a powerful comeback while the fake one schemes to maintain her status. The real heiress, Gu-jin, was dealt a rough hand in life but returned with a bang, hiding her true identity behind countless personas and crushing everyone in her path. Meanwhile, the fake heiress, Gu-young, was a textbook example of someone who smiled sweetly but plotted maliciously. She ended up losing everything and dying miserably after crossing the story's big villain, a literal human blood bank who was tortured her whole life and eventually turned into a deranged villain. She couldn't help but roast the story. Wow, fake versus real heiress showdown? Over-the-top villains? This is drama on steroids. It's so ridiculously messy, I can't stop reading. But she also cringed hard. Why on earth did the fake heiress in the story have to share her exact name? Just as she was contemplating this, her lawyer called with shocking news. Her dad had officially named her as the heir to his $10 billion fortune. Her eyes went wide as saucers. Then, because fate clearly has a sense of humor, she choked on her food from excitement and started coughing so hard her vision blurred. Her last coherent thought before passing out? Am I seriously about to choke to death right after inheriting a fortune? How embarrassing. She wasn't sure how much time had passed before she woke up to the sound of heated arguing. Groggy and disoriented, she blinked at her surroundings, trying to make sense of it all. That's when she heard a middle-aged woman angrily scolding someone. You know, Yang has a blood disorder. Even a small cut could make her bleed out, and you still had the nerve to push her down the stairs on purpose? As she lay on the bed, a sudden memory jolted her back to reality. She'd just inherited a fortune worth billions. But as she tried to sit up, dizziness hit her like a truck. $10 billion. She mumbled to herself, and her head spinning from getting up too fast. The middle-aged woman, her face full of concern, rushed to her side. Yang, are you okay? Don't scare your mom like that. Trying to steady herself, she glanced sideways, and froze. Sitting next to her bed was a teenage boy. A ridiculously good-looking one, at that. She stared at him in a daze, before blurting out, "Who's that?" "Wow, he's hot." The boy's expression immediately turned sour, and the middle-aged woman, thinking her daughter had hit her head too hard, hurriedly called for a doctor. Meanwhile, her own thoughts were spinning. Where the heck am I? And who are these people? Then, bits and pieces of memories began flooding her mind. She remembered standing at the top of a staircase, blocking her sister's way. A voice rang out in her mind, "Putting on a show for mom must be exhausting, huh? Don't worry, you won't have to fake it anymore." Her sister, visibly irritated, had told her to move. But she'd smirked, retorting, "How could someone as tacky as you deserve to stay here with me? Don't worry, I've got the perfect solution, helping you pack your bags and leave." When her sister tried to push past her, she leaned in close, whispering with a sneer, "What do you think mom will do if she thinks you pushed me down the stairs?" And then, without hesitation, she deliberately stepped back and flung herself down the staircase. The last thing she remembered before blacking out was her mom running toward her in a panic, shouting her name. As the memories clicked into place, a chilling realization hit her. She wasn't just in a hospital bed. She was inside the very novel she'd been reading, the one where the fake heiress did exactly what she'd just remembered doing. The memory jolted her awake, and she heard the doctor calmly reassuring her. "Miss Gu-young, there's nothing serious, just a mild concussion. You'll need some rest for a while." Before she could process that, the middle-aged woman from earlier exploded in anger again. "If it weren't for the doctor and pure luck, Yang could have been killed because of you." Her mind was still spinning as she pieced together what she had just remembered. Gu-young. Hemophilia. An extremely rare blood type. And the girl standing before her? That was the real protagonist, the legit heiress, Gu-jin. Everything clicked at once. She had transmigrated into the world of the novel she'd been reading. And not just into any role, she was the villainess. The bad vibes sank in hard. From the moment she arrived, she'd pissed off both the true heroine and the future antagonist. She was doomed. Dead on arrival. Game over. All she wanted now was to go back to her real life, back to her billion-dollar fortune. She shuddered, recalling how the male lead was the type who'd casually chop off fingers when annoyed. If that wasn't bad enough, the female lead had layers of hidden identities and loyal followers. You know what, she thought, maybe hitting restart on life isn't so bad. As she considered giving up entirely, the middle-aged woman, her new mom, snapped her back to the present. If anything happens to Yang today, you're going straight back to that orphanage in the countryside. Do you hear me, Gu-jin? Her eyes darted to her sister, Gu-jin, who responded with a lazy drawl, I didn't push her. Their mom's face darkened. Don't you dare lie to me. Gu-jin, don't think that coming back here means you'll live a life of luxury. The only true heiress of the Gu family is Yang. Before her mom could escalate the drama any further, Gu Yang jumped in with a nervous laugh. No. Mom, you've got it all wrong. Sis didn't push me, I just missed a step and fell. There was no way she was letting her mom's tirade dig this hole even deeper. Not if she wanted to survive. Her only shot at a happy ending was to play nice, patch things up, and cling to her sister's favor like her life depended on it. Because in this world, it probably did. But her sister just shot her a dismissive glance, clearly unimpressed, while their mom continued scolding her. She hadn't expected that reaction from her sister. Does she think I'm some fake goody-goody? Gu Yang thought, panicking slightly. Determined to calm things down, she climbed out of bed and coaxed both her mom and sister to sit. Let's talk this out. I'm sure this is just a big misunderstanding, she said with a forced smile. Their mom, however, wasn't ready to let go of her anger. She raised her voice at Gu-jin, even if she's trying to excuse you, can't you act like an older sister for once? Her sister clenched her jaw, clearly holding back her frustration, and replied firmly, I already said, I didn't push her. That only made their mom angrier. Still denying it? Unbelievable. Her sister looked like she was about to explode, but she just let out a bitter laugh instead. Meanwhile, Gu Yang felt like she was stuck in a bad soap opera. Can't my new mom chill for a second? Picking a fight with a future big shot doesn't seem like a winning strategy here. Then, the doctor chimed in, sounding bored but direct, the house has security cameras. We can just check the footage. That's when Gu Yang remembered something crucial. This doctor wasn't just anyone, he was connected to the novel's most powerful character. Her pulse spiked. If he looked at the footage and saw something off, it could all spiral out of control. Still, her mom was adamant. I saw it happen. What's the point of checking? Even if we do, she's going to jail. Her sister didn't argue. She just let out another cold laugh, but Gu Yang had that you're all ridiculous vibe. That's when it hit her, this was about to get way worse. Her sister's phone had been recording the whole time. She remembered the novel, once this evidence came out, it was game over for her. Desperate to salvage the situation, Gu Yang blurted out, Mom, seriously, it was my fault. I missed a step and fell. Don't blame sis. She knew she couldn't let her relationship with her sister, or her sister's mysterious connections, get any worse. Otherwise, she wouldn't just be in trouble, she'd be done for. Her mom didn't look convinced, but let out a sigh, clearly annoyed. Fine, but if this happens again, don't think I'll just let it slide, she warned, still throwing shade at Gu-jin. Gu-jin, meanwhile, glanced down at her phone, her fingers pausing mid-scroll. The way she raised an eyebrow said it all, why are you defending me when I've got evidence you're lying? For now, though, the crisis seemed to be over. Their mom grudgingly backed off, and Gu Yang exhaled in relief. If she wanted to stay alive in this world, she'd need to tread carefully. Very, very carefully. She finally let out a sigh of relief, only to turn around and catch her sister walking away. Flashing a sweet smile, she called out, "Take care, sis." Just then, a servant rushed in, bowing slightly as they announced, "If there's nothing else, I'll escort young Master Feng Ju out now." Wait, what? Gu Yang asked, confused. The servant gently reminded her, "Miss, have you forgotten? You were the one who ordered that young Master Feng Ju wasn't allowed to stay in the house." Oh, right. It all came back to her. The original owner of this body had kicked Feng Ju out over something petty, breaking her skincare products, of all things. What a perfect opportunity to score some points with the villain, though. Smiling warmly, Guyang quickly backtracked, "Oh, that? I was just angry at the time. Come on, Xiaoju is still my little brother. He can't just sleep in the garden house. Let him return to his room." The servant visibly brightened at her change of tone. Feng Ju, however, remained as frosty as ever. "Thank you, sister," he said flatly, his deep voice calm but distant. Guyang reached out to ruffle his hair lightly and smiled. "Go on, then. Get a good night's rest." With that, she turned and headed to her own room. As she walked away, Feng Ju's eyes followed her, his expression unreadable. Inside, though, he was skeptical. "What new trick is this, Guyang? What kind of twisted plan are you cooking up now?" Returning to her room, Guyang looked into the mirror, staring at the unfamiliar face and vibrant pink hair staring back at her. "Seriously?" she muttered. "Talk about screaming, this evil side character. Even the hair colors over the top." Still, she had to admit, this villainess was gorgeous, in an almost over-the-top way that weirdly matched her own style back in her old life. But what good was beauty when it came with all this baggage? In real life, Guyang had been the darling of an elite family, slowly making a name for herself as a psychologist. Her career had just started to take off when, bam, she'd been thrown into the pages of a cliché drama novel. Now, she was stuck playing the role of a scheming villainess, with no clue if she'd ever get back to her real life. If returning wasn't an option, she figured she might as well try to make the best of it. But with her luck? Yeah, that wasn't going to be easy. But come to think of it, if she suddenly died, wouldn't that 10 billion end up in the hands of the illegitimate child? The thought crossed her mind as she drifted off to sleep. The next morning, a loud text notification jolted her awake. It was her cousin, messaging to say she'd arrived to help her slap that hypocritical face. The text shocked her fully awake. What was with these people stirring up drama at the crack of dawn? Couldn't they just chill for a day? Groaning, Guyang got ready, rushed downstairs, and headed to the living room. As soon as she entered, everyone greeted her with warm smiles. Her cousin beamed and loudly exclaimed, "Oh, we were just talking about that snake, the one who pushed you down the stairs. Honestly, if you ask me, it's attempted murder for the inheritance. She belongs behind bars." Ah, right. Guyang remembered now. This cousin of hers was Ruan Yen, the second daughter of the Ruan family and an actress under Gu Family Entertainment. To get ahead, Ruan Yen had cozied up to the Gu family's enemies, and the two had teamed up for their fair share of scheming. Smiling slyly, Guyang raised her voice deliberately, "Cousin Ruan Yen, why are you calling me a snake?" Ruan Yen's face changed instantly, and she hurried to clarify, "Not you, of course. I was talking about that foster daughter of your family." Feigning surprise, Guyang pressed further, "But didn't you just say the Gu family's foster daughter is a snake?" "Well, technically, I'm the foster daughter, since my sister Gu Jin is the real daughter of the Gu family." Her mother, who had been sitting nearby, immediately scolded her. Yang, what nonsense are you spouting? Did Gu Jin put you up to this?" Guyang couldn't help but think how ridiculously biased her mom was. Still, she stepped forward, took her mother's hand, and spoke seriously. "Mom, I've been thinking about this a lot. It's not fair to my sister. I've been living this privileged life with all your love, while she's endured years of hardship. We should do something to make it up to her." Guyang couldn't let her sister come back home only to be mistreated again. Her mother was touched by her heartfelt words, but her cousin, Ruan Yen, was secretly sneering. After all, Guyang had spent so much time ridiculing her as an illegitimate child, only to discover that this so-called foster daughter wasn't even that. Playing innocent, Ruan Yen asked, "Cousin, what are you talking about? What's all this nonsense about fake daughters stealing someone else's nest?" "I don't understand." Gu Jin, who had been silently observing the whole exchange, finally spoke up with a smirk. Maybe you're just too dumb to get it. Won Yen flared up instantly, shouting, "What's that supposed to mean? Are you saying I'm stupid? Who do you think you are, you country bumpkin? If the Gu family really valued you, they would have publicly acknowledged you long ago." Seeing her cousin lose her cool, Gu Yang couldn't resist throwing in another jab. "Won Yen, you don't seem to understand much of anything. Maybe you should hit the books a little more." Then, with a wink at Gu Jin, she added fuel to the fire. Gu Jin, unbothered, simply chuckled softly and stayed quiet. Their mother, worried about potential gossip, quickly jumped in to reassure her. "Don't worry, Yang Yang. No matter what anyone says, you're still the Gu family's daughter in every way that matters. Your father and I will take care of this." Watching her mother's unwavering affection for her, Won Yan's mind began to churn with new schemes. With a sweet smile, she handed over a carefully wrapped gift. "By the way, cousin, I heard that little brat broke the skincare set I gave you last time. So, I brought you a new one. I hope you like it." Gu Yang smiled graciously. "Thank you, cousin. That's so thoughtful of you." Then, as if it had just occurred to her, she added, "Oh, by the way, I heard that uncle recently invested in drinking songs in the fields, and they've cast Jingdi." Won Yen expressed regret. "I'm such a fan of his. It's a shame I've never gotten the chance to meet him in person." Feigning concern, Gu Yang continued, "But don't worry, Won Yen. It's not surprising you haven't met him either. After all, you're not exactly on his level yet." Won Yan's composure cracked. Just as she was about to retort, Gu Yang cut her off with a polite but firm tone. "Anyway, I've got to head to the music room for practice. If there's nothing else, you know the way out." Gu Yang stood up and walked out, ignoring the storm brewing on her cousin's face. Once in the music room, she focused intently on her piano practice. The enchanting melody filled the air, and she was completely immersed in it, until a hand suddenly pressed down on the keys. Startled, she looked up, only to find her sister looming over her. "Why?" her sister asked sharply. Gu Yang raised her voice slightly, feigning innocence. "You mean why I revealed the truth about my identity? I guess I just took a hard fall that knocked my moral compass back into place." Her sister extended a hand. "Give me that skincare set." For a moment, Gu Yang froze, unsure of how to respond. Her sister sneered. "What's wrong? Can't bear to part with a measly set of skincare products? Yet you had no problem tossing me the Gu family's title." Gu Yang laughed softly, unbothered. "Oh, you noticed something was off with the skincare, didn't you?" Her sister didn't answer. Instead, she strode to the window, pulled back the curtains, and after a moment said coolly, "Weren't you practicing? Get back to it." That reaction confirmed her suspicion. Her sister had figured it out. Gu Yang, of course, only knew the skincare was tampered with because of her knowledge of the novel's plot. But her sister? She could tell, just by looking at the packaging. The next hour passed quietly. Her sister sat nearby, listening as she practiced. Gu Yang recalled that in the novel, her sister was too detached to meddle like this, especially when it came to her schemes involving skincare products. Her intervention must have shifted something. Gu Yang wasn't sure how much time had passed when her sister's steady breathing suddenly. "I haven't slept this soundly in ages. Was it because of your playing?" Leaning in playfully. "I've been here the whole time, watching over you, sis." "So, how'd I do?" "Not bad, huh?" Her sister scowled, shoving her back with a huff. "Practice more." Then, without another word, she walked out of the music room, her cool demeanor firmly in place. Gu Yang remembered the original character in the novel being a brilliant pianist and wondered if her playing was so terrible that it left the big boss, like her sister, completely silent. Determined to do better, she resolved to practice harder and live up to her role as the hapless supporting character. The next morning, Gu Yang was sleeping soundly when her phone rang. Annoyed, she picked up, only to be bombarded with accusations on the other end. "What's all this about the trending topic saying you're a fake daughter? Don't play dumb with me. How dare a fool like you trick my mom? She's already gone to talk to your mom about the engagement. You'd better explain yourself. Before the caller could continue ranting, she casually tossed the phone aside and prepared to go back to sleep. But as Guyang lay there, her groggy mind replayed the mention of the trending topic. The Gu family was always so concerned about their image, and yet here she was, unbothered by the scandal of her fake identity hitting the news. Instead, she grabbed her phone to eat her own melon, to revel in the drama about herself. Being a recent transmigrator into the novel, she felt detached from her current identity. As she scrolled through the headlines, one name stood out, young Master Shui. That's when it clicked, her earlier phone call had been from her supposed fiancé. In the original story, the Gu and Shui families had an arranged marriage deal. After discovering she wasn't the Gu family's biological daughter, the original character was dumped and desperately tried to marry Shui duo anyway. She even went so far as to betray the Gu family by leaking business secrets. The Shui family used this information to swallow up the Gu family's wealth, and though she succeeded in marrying into the Shui family, her good fortune didn't last. Deemed useless, she was abandoned, only to later meet a gruesome end at the hands of the villain, her finger cut off before she was killed. Yeah, no way was she getting involved with that scumbag. Just then, a text notification popped up. It was from Shui Duo, chastising her for hanging up on him and reminding her that playing hard to get only works if done sparingly. He even threw in a snide comment about the engagement. Guyang rolled her eyes. This guy is seriously delusional, she muttered, deciding he wasn't even worth a response. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from the living room. She rushed out to see what had happened and found her mom, fuming. The Shui family saw the trending topic and now they want to break off the engagement. They're swapping out for Gu Jin, her mom ranted. Her mom turned to the servants and ordered, "Go find Gu Jin. I want to know what gives her the nerve to steal her sister's fiancé." Guyang was left feeling helpless. The plot just kept piling on, one thing after another. No time to breathe. She quickly reminded her mom, "You've got to calm down. The engagement was proposed by the Shui family, so why blame my sister for it?" Her mom, still angry, replied bitterly, "With your reputation ruined, who else could it be? You're the one marrying into the Shui family, not anyone else." Guyang wanted to point out that someone like Shui Duo wasn't even worth fighting over, but her mom was already so upset. So, she smiled and tried to explain, "Mom, the trending topic is true, but it's not that big of a deal. Plus, I just found out about the Gu and Shui family's engagement too. There's no way my sister would be scheming to steal my fiancé." Her words left her mom silent. Guyang knew her mom was taking in what she said, so she continued, "Mom, you should have had the PR team remove the topic from the trending list by now. But it's still number one. Do you think my sister could have handled it?" Her mom was starting to see her point, but she sighed, "No way. But if not her, then who?" Seeing the right moment, Guyang pretended to guess, "Mom, maybe you know more about this than you're letting on. But, of course, cousin isn't the type to do something like that. Maybe I'm just overthinking it." Her mom's face suddenly changed. "That bastard, Wan Yen, she must have done this. After you rejected her, she's just getting back at us. I'm going to confront her right now." Guyang quickly stopped her. "Mom, going now won't change anything." Her mom didn't quite get what she was hinting at, so Guyang added, "I mean, maybe we should wait for Dad to get home and discuss this together. Besides, cousin Wan Yen probably just accidentally let something slip. She's always been nice to me. When Feng Ju broke the skincare products she gave me, she even replaced them with a new set. Look, Mom, my skin's gotten so much brighter and smoother after using them." Hearing that, her mom quickly became suspicious and raised her voice, "There's no way skincare works that fast. Yang, that set might be problematic. I'll have it tested right now." As her mom said this, she stormed off angrily but only made it a few steps before stopping in her tracks. She suddenly turned around, ran back, and hugged her tightly. In a soft, pained voice, she murmured, Yang, it's my fault for not protecting you. You've had to endure so much online hate and even lost the engagement with the Shui family." For the first time, Guyang felt what it was like to be truly cared for. Her heart softened a little. Her mom might be biased, but she was undeniably a good mother. Silently, Guyang made a vow to protect the Gu family this time. After her mom left, she let out a deep breath. Honestly, she wanted to ask, do we really have to deal with face-slapping drama every single day? Isn't it exhausting? But sticking to the storyline, Guyang couldn't shake the feeling she had left something undone today. Then, a sudden image of someone getting beaten up flashed through her mind. That's right, she still had to save the poor punching bag. Guyang quickly changed into something lightweight and dashed out the door. Her plan was to rush over and raise Fengju's goodwill toward her as quickly as possible. But as she ran, a shaky stranger stumbled past her. Before she could react, the person collapsed to the ground. Her first thought was scam artist. Almost immediately, passers-by started giving her weird looks and whispering, pointing at her without waiting to hear her side of the story. Guyang was speechless. How did these people gather around so fast to watch? Still, she decided to check on the situation first. It turned out the person had gone into cardiac arrest. She immediately called out for someone nearby to dial 911 and asked the crowd to disperse a bit to keep the air flowing. Guyang started performing CPR on the patient, but no one seemed to believe her. They all thought she was just pretending to help. At that moment, a boy wearing a mask stepped forward to vouch for her. I saw everything. She didn't hit anyone, she's just trying to help, he said. Then, another man stepped up and began assisting her with the rescue. Finally, the ambulance arrived. After examining the patient, the paramedics confirmed that the critical 4-minute window for saving lives hadn't been wasted and praised their excellent CPR efforts. The man who had helped also complimented her on her precise technique, saying her chest compressions were spot on. Smiling, she replied, "It was only possible thanks to your cooperation." "Are you a doctor?" That's when he introduced himself. "I'm Jing Minghui, director of the Jin City Psychiatric Hospital." She shared her name in return. Suddenly, she noticed the boy who had spoken up for her earlier and quickly thanked him with a smile. The boy blushed and said shyly, "I just told the truth, I didn't do much." She glanced at her phone to check the time and immediately realized she was in trouble. The punching bag's already been getting beat up for a while now. She quickly waved goodbye to the boy and dashed off. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Fengju was cornered by a group of people, bruised and battered. One of them sneered, "Kid, you really must have a death wish to turn down our young miss." Another chimed in mockingly, "Why waste time talking? Let's teach him a lesson first, then drag him over to entertain the young miss." Guyang arrived just in time to catch the tail end of someone's taunting remark. Annoyed, she shouted, "Who does your so-called young miss think she is, trying to take my people?" Despite knowing these thugs were bad news, she still charged in alone. Bringing backup hadn't even crossed her mind, after all, she was more than prepared. One of the guys, clearly underestimating her, tried to grope her. Without hesitation, she grabbed him and slammed him to the ground, grinding her foot into his hand so hard he couldn't fight back. Guyang scoffed, "I told you not to mess with my people." "Fine, all of you come at me, let's get this over with. I've got somewhere to be." Her sheer boldness shocked them, and it pissed them off even more. They grabbed weapons and rushed her, but within minutes, they were all on the ground, defeated. Turns out, spending over a year in a special forces training camp to prevent being kidnapped had more than paid off. To her, taking down this group wasn't even a warm-up. From the corner, Fengju watched the whole thing unfold, his cold eyes unreadable. Only when she walked over did he soften his expression, hiding his real feelings. "Are you okay, sis?" he asked, feigning concern. Guyang smiled brightly and ruffled his hair. "I'm fine. Big sis has got your back." Then, she asked, "What's going on? Who'd you piss off this time?" Fengju pointed to the obvious culprit. Wang Yunqin, the chairman of Hingyu Entertainment's daughter. "She likes me, I turned her down, and now she's trying to kidnap me." Her jaw dropped. Seriously? The sheer audacity left her stunned, and Fengju misread her reaction as frustration. He couldn't help but mentally grumble, "Come on, girl, you're giving up after 3 days of pretending? I've been faking it for years." Feigning guilt, he tugged at her sleeve and whispered, "I'm sorry, sis. It's my fault for dragging you into this and making you upset." Gu Yang patted his head gently, reassuring him. "You're fine, it's not your fault. From now on, if anyone dares to mess with you, I'll make sure they regret it." Feng Ju didn't believe a word she said. He figured she was just keeping up the act, so he played along, saying, "Thanks, sis." Right then, the police arrived. One officer asked, "Who called us?" Gu Yang immediately raised her hand. "I did, officer. These guys were causing trouble and beating people up for no reason." One of the men she'd taken down scrambled to defend himself, shouting, "No way. We're the victims here. She came out of nowhere and took all of us down." The officer gave him a once-over and then glanced at her. "Are you telling me this skinny, delicate-looking girl single-handedly beat up a whole group of grown men like you? Is that what you're saying? Sir, do you have any evidence?" The man froze, completely stumped, but Gu Yang jumped in smoothly. "Oh, he doesn't, but I do. I recorded everything they said earlier." With that, the police rounded up the bruised and battered thugs and carted them off, while she cheerfully grabbed Feng Ju's arm. "Let's go eat." Gu Yang made a beeline for a swanky club her sister used to frequent. As soon as they got to the door, a waiter stopped her and politely asked for her membership card. She froze for a second, realizing she'd been so focused on making an impression in Jingyang Pavilion that she'd completely forgotten it was members only. In the novel, Gu Yang remembered this place was a favorite hangout for the big boss to handle business. She had no idea if her sister was here today, but it was worth a shot. "I'm here to find someone," she told the server, trying to sound confident. What she didn't notice was Feng Ju quietly pulling out a membership card from his pocket behind her back. The server asked her, "Who are you looking for?" Before she could answer, a deep, unfamiliar male voice interrupted, "She's looking for me." Startled, she turned around to see a smug-looking man striding toward her. His friends were whispering behind him, "Isn't that Shui Duo's fiancé?" "Fiancé? Please, like a fake could ever be good enough for our Shui Duo. She's clearly here to beg for him to take her back," one of his friends sneered. Shui Duo didn't respond to his buddy, instead raising his voice mockingly at her. "So, this is why you haven't replied to my messages? You heard I was at Jingyang Pavilion and just had to rush over, huh?" Gu Yang froze for a moment, trying to place who this guy even was. Seeing her hesitation, Shui Duo smirked and continued, "Don't play dumb, Gu Yang. I know you're mad about the broken engagement. Look, I couldn't care less about that bumpkin Gu Jin either, but hey, you're not even the real Gu family heiress." Gu Yang stared at him, genuinely baffled, then muttered under her breath, "Wow, I guess all those trashy male leads in novels really are this dumb." Shui Duo frowned. "What did you just say?" "Oh, nothing," Gu Yang replied with a sly grin. "Just that maybe you should get your brain checked. Because neither my sister nor I would ever be into someone like you." Unbeknownst to her, her sister had been nearby and overheard everything. Her sister couldn't help but silently agree with her statement. Shui Duo looked her over, a little surprised by her sharp tongue and, honestly, how much better she looked now. Still, he couldn't let himself lose face. Turning to the server, he barked, "She's not my guest. Kick her out. I don't want her disturbing my meal." The server hesitated as her phone buzzed. After a quick exchange, she hung up and turned toward Shui Duo with a polite but firm tone. "Young Master Shui, your membership card has just been revoked by Jingyang Pavilion. We'll have to ask you and your party to leave immediately." Shui Duo's smug grin disappeared in an instant. Shui Duo's friends were utterly stunned. Did they hear that right? The audacity of a lowly waiter to publicly kick out a VIP member without any regard for his reputation. But the server wasn't acting alone, their orders came directly from the owner, who had also given strict instructions to clear the place if anyone caused trouble. Shui Duo, unwilling to accept the humiliation, roared, "I didn't break any rules at Jingyang Pavilion. What right do you have to revoke my membership? Let go of me." but no matter how much he yelled, the bodyguards didn't loosen their grip. They dragged him out forcefully as he protested. Gu Yang stood off to the side, quietly observing the scene, a glimmer of thought in her eyes. The server turned to her and her companion with an apologetic smile, gesturing for them to head inside. Gu Yang realized her gamble had paid off, the big shot was indeed here, and she had just secured herself a lifeline. All she had to do now was stick close and make herself useful. Surely, her persistence would win her some goodwill points, right? Soon enough, they were escorted to a private room. As Gu Yang glanced around, her eyes landed on a young man sitting beside the big shot, her sister Gu Jin. Judging by his stylish outfit, he had to be one of her sister's closest allies, Su Yi, better known online as Jesus, the 7th-ranked hacker on the darknet. Suddenly, her sister slid the menu toward her and asked what she'd like to eat. She seemed intrigued, as if wondering how Gu Yang had found this place and what her real intentions were. But Gu Yang's thoughts were elsewhere. If she could score favor points with both Su Yan and her sister in one go, this was a win-win scenario. Beaming, Gu Yang responded cheerfully, "Sister, Xiaoju, and I have no other choice." "Right, Xiaoju?" She even glanced over at Fengju, smiling as if nothing was amiss. But before Gu Yang could finish her sentence, she froze. Fengju sat there quietly, his face alarmingly pale. It hit her then, he wasn't just a convenient ally or someone to cozy up to. To the people around him, he wasn't even human, he was nothing more than a blood bank, his pain and well-being completely disregarded. When her sister noticed she wasn't ordering, she went ahead and picked a list of their usual favorites. Just as the server was about to leave, Gu Yang quickly added, "Oh, and bring a plate of stir-fried pork liver, plus 2 ounces of rice wine, warm the wine up a bit." The server hesitated, glancing at her nervously. "Miss, this is Jingyang Pavilion. Every dish here is crafted to national banquet standards." Before the server could finish, her sister waved it off, insisting she go ahead and prepare the order. Soon, the table was filled with an array of exquisite dishes. The sight alone made Gu Yang's mouth water. In the novels she'd read, Jingyang Pavilion's private cuisine was hyped to the heavens, and now here it was, right in front of her. She couldn't wait to dig in. As Gu Yang picked up her chopsticks and reached for a bite, something stopped her. These dishes looked familiar. She took a taste and froze. They were incredible, better than anything she'd ever had before, but they weren't that taste, the one she'd been craving. It was a flavor that no longer existed, one tied to a past she couldn't return to. Noticing she had taken only one bite before putting her chopsticks down, Fengju assumed she didn't like the food. "If these aren't to your taste, we can order something else," he offered, his tone unusually gentle. "Whatever you want." Across from her, her sister chuckled, teasing, "Didn't you say you weren't picky? What's this? Even the handiwork of a national banquet chef isn't good enough for our Miss High standards?" Flustered, Gu Yang waved her hands. No. I love it, it's amazing. I just zoned out for a second, that's all." She was determined now. If scoring brownie points with them meant stuffing her face, so be it. Gu Yang dived into the meal, eating with gusto. At one point, she even nudged a dish toward Fengju. "Xiaoju, this one's for you, it's good for replenishing blood." Fengju blinked, surprised by her sudden gesture. After a brief pause, he gave a soft smile and said, "Thank you, sis." That look, so obedient, so sweet, it caught her off guard. He was so well behaved that it made her want to tease him more, just to see if she could get him to react. Suddenly, Suyi across the table shouted excitedly, "Boss, check this out. That group of idiots from the Gu family has paid to take down the trending hashtag about their fake heiress for the 7th time now. Every time they remove it, I just push it back to the top." Gu Jin froze, her whole body stiffening in awkward silence. Noticing she wasn't responding, Suyi pressed on, grinning. "Aren't you going to praise me, boss?" Gu Jin turned around, exasperated, and finally decided to ignore him. But Gu Yang seemed interested in this topic, she laughed and asked, "And then what?" Seeing that she was intrigued, Suyi raised his voice proudly. "Then, those fools over at Gu family thought it was just other hashtags with low engagement. So, they tried to deflect by releasing gossip about their artist's love life. Now the trending page is full of entertainment news, but guess what? Sitting pretty at the top is still that green tea, Guyang. Oh, right. I got so caught up earlier I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Suyi. What's your name, fairy lady? Guyang smiled and said, I'm Guyang. Suyi didn't think much of it and joked, haha. No way, fairy lady, you have the same name as that little green tea. Then, with a laugh, he added, wait, you're not actually her, right? Guyang smirked and dropped the bombshell, not the same name. I am Guyang, the fake heiress you've been talking about. You know, the little green tea at the top of the trending list. Stunned, Suyi turned to his sister for confirmation. Boss, is this true? Is the fairy lady really that Guyang? Gujin sighed, clearly resigned. Yes, it's true. She's my younger sister. Hearing her sister acknowledge her as a sibling, Guyang was momentarily dumbfounded. Her powerful older sister actually admitted their connection, even though they were not real sisters. Maybe Big Sis wasn't as intimidating as she seemed, she might even be easy to get along with. Meanwhile, Suyi watched the sisterly dynamic unfold and couldn't help but mentally complain, where's all the dramatic rich family fake heiress catfighting? Boss and the fairy lady look like they actually get along. Suyi quickly owned up, boss, my bad. It's all that fake info from Jilling's White Witch. I'll take down the trending tag right now and refund the money the Gu family spent to push it down. He dove into action at his computer, but before he could do anything, his screen suddenly went dark, hacked by someone named Quest. Guyang remembered Quest as the third-ranked hacker in the original novel's storyline. The first and second were, of course, the main leads, but Quest had always been more of a background figure. So why was this hacker targeting Suyi out of nowhere? Unfazed, Suyi pulled out his phone. No worries, I can handle this on my mobile. But when he checked, the trending tag was already gone. Confused, he whispered, wait, I didn't even touch it yet. Boss, was it you? His sister shook her head, raising her chopsticks. I'm eating. Before anyone could figure it out, Suyi's phone also got hacked, this time by Quest again. Frustrated, Suyi slammed the table. That's it. I'm declaring war on Quest from now on. Guyang tried to calm him down, smiling slightly. No point in getting mad, it's handled now, isn't it? Nearby, Fengju had been glued to his phone throughout the chaos. With a flick of her wrist, Guyang pushed a full bowl of rice in front of him. Put the phone down and eat. Don't think I won't notice if you try to skip meals. Reluctantly, Fengju set the phone aside. Once lunch wrapped up, the two of them left together. Suyi, still flustered, couldn't help but think, she's nothing like what I dug up about her personality. Meanwhile, Gujin casually asked Suyi, how's that other matter coming along? He gave her a confident grin. No worries. There's no way they'll figure it out anytime soon. And those idiots in Jin City? No way they'd suspect that you'd start by sabotaging Liang City first, then walk right into Jin City flaunting the Gu family's real heiress identity. His sister chuckled knowingly. It's not like we can keep it hidden forever. Besides, someone from the Shao family in the imperial capital showed up too. She smirked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Not that it'll do him any good, he'll just waste his trip. Meanwhile, as Guyang and Fengju walked back, the sun beat down hard, making the scars on his body even more noticeable. She couldn't ignore the fact that Fengju had been raised like a human blood bank, yet he'd never once complained, always obedient and mild-mannered. But could he really be so unbothered by all the harm done to him? Was he truly that pure-hearted, or was he just hiding it really well? As Guyang considered how to make amends, she wondered if it was too late. If it was the former, a little kindness might still reach him. But if it was the latter, well, her own safety might be at risk. Guyang stopped walking and turned to him. Xiaoju, she began, her tone serious, over the years, I've carelessly, or maybe intentionally, put you through countless blood transfusions for me. Look me in the eyes and tell me, do you resent me for it? Her gaze locked onto his as she activated her hypnotic powers. Fengju's expression turned blank, and his voice came out calm and steady. I don't hate you. My blood belongs to my sister. Guyang froze, stunned by his response. Her hypnosis had never failed before, and under its influence, no one could lie. That meant what he'd said was his true, inner thought. The Gu family really brainwashed him to this extent? That's so messed up. Still, hearing him say he didn't resent her eased her worry a bit. At least he hadn't gone dark, there was still hope. Smiling lightly, she reached out and tapped his forehead, lifting the hypnosis. Worried he might overthink her actions, Guyang quickly added, there was something on your head. I just brushed it off. Without waiting for a response, she turned and started walking again, cheerfully suggesting, let's go shopping together. Starting now, I'm going to make it up to you. No more letting my little blood bank go rogue. What she didn't see was Fengju standing frozen behind her, his face shadowed with an unsettling intensity. His clenched fist had already drawn blood from his palm. Guyang knew this boy would grow up to be the villain, the one who'd eventually cut off her fingers. But right now, she still made him carry all her shopping bags, just because she wanted to buy him more clothes. It felt like a small way to make up for everything he'd endured because of her, hoping it might somehow change her fate. She didn't realize she'd gone overboard until she saw him struggling under the weight of all the bags. Reaching out, Guyang tried to take one from his left hand. Here, let me help. Fengju shook his head. No need. I've got it. They stepped into the elevator together. As more and more people piled in, it got cramped fast. Feeling the crowd press in, she shifted uncomfortably. Without a word, Fengju turned and positioned himself in front of her, shielding her from the crush. The sudden closeness made her face flush. Why did the air suddenly feel weird? An elderly woman standing nearby chuckled knowingly. Your boyfriend treats you so well, dear. Hold on to him tight. Her brain short-circuited. What? No, you've got it wrong. He's not my. Before Guyang could finish, the elevator reached its stop, and the other passengers filed out. Embarrassed, she quickly changed the subject. So, did you like what we bought today? If you do, we can go again next time. Fengju smiled softly. I like anything my sister picks for me. Watching him be this sweet and obedient, she couldn't help but think, ugh, he's adorable. If she hadn't used hypnosis earlier to confirm his pure-hearted nature, she might have thought he was flirting on purpose. When they got home, just as Guyang was about to unlock the door, loud shouting echoed from inside. You're supposed to be a lady from a prestigious family. Do you even have a shred of dignity? It's dark out and you're not home, what's next? Are you planning to stay out all night? Guyang paused, startled. Wait, since when was there this much drama in the Gu family? Curious, she and Fengju carefully cracked the door open to peek inside. Her older sister's cold voice cut through the air. Dignity? I wouldn't know. Hard to have any when you grow up with a mom who's alive but never around. Their mother's face twisted in fury at those words. Raising her hand, she shouted, You ungrateful child. I dare you to say that again. Seeing things escalate, Guyang quickly stepped forward, raising her voice. Mom, wait, I'm back. But her mom's hand still came down on her sister, followed by a sharp rebuke. Is this how you speak to your elders? Panic surged in her chest. Great, all the goodwill I built today is gone. Guyang scrambled to think of a way to fix things, but before she could, her sister scoffed. Mrs. Gu, your perfect daughter just got home. Maybe you should say that again. Her mom's anger flared hotter, hand raising once more. Gu Jin, is this how you address your mother? I'll teach you respect today. Without thinking, Guyang rushed forward, wrapping her arms around her mom from behind. Mom, she just got home, it takes time to adjust, right? You can't expect her to change overnight. Her mom froze for a moment, the words softening her anger. Lowering her hand, she let out a cold huff. You're always so thoughtful, unlike certain ungrateful brats. Not wanting things to spiral again, Guyang cut in quickly with a bright smile. Oh, By the way, Mom, did the test results come back for that skincare set my cousin Ruan Yen gave me? Her mom's focus shifted, eyes narrowing. That girl. I should have known. The lead levels in that stuff were off the charts. At first, it works wonders, but use it long enough, and not only will it ruin your skin, it could kill you. Feigning shock, Guyang gasped. No way. I've always been so nice to cousin Ruan Yen, and she. Her mom didn't let her finish. Of course she did it out of jealousy. I'd bet my life she's behind that trending scandal too. It's always that illegitimate girl stirring trouble. Despite the words, her mom's gaze softened with concern, scanning her face for signs of damage. Good thing the skincare set Ruan Yen gave me got knocked over by Xiaoju last time. Still, I should probably get checked at the hospital just in case. She laughed, brushing it off. Seriously, if it weren't for Xiaoju, I'd probably still be using that stuff, my face might have been ruined by now. Grabbing her mom's arm, she led her toward the dining room, pretending to tag along for dinner while sneaking a hand behind her back to wave Fengju away. Fengju only smirked, not exactly grateful. Guyang was in a good mood, feeling like she'd dodged another bullet. Maybe she could just coast her way to the end of all this. But when she headed upstairs, she found her sister standing by her bedroom door. Her sister's expression was unreadable, and she looked up coolly. You didn't forget something, did you? Panic flickered through her mind. What did she forget? Her first instinct was that her sister was here for payback. Guyang immediately blurted out, I'm sorry. Mom was probably just mad at cousin today, I'll apologize on her behalf. Her sister didn't even blink. Not that, she said, pulling out her phone and holding up a QR code. Scan before dinner at Jingyang Pavilion, cash or card? She hadn't been standing there for revenge, just waiting to demand money. Still, the sudden confrontation left Guyang flustered. Her sister's calmness made it worse. After a pause, her sister raised a brow. What? Planning to skip out on the bill? No way. I'll send it right now, Guyang replied quickly. As she scanned the code to transfer the money, she froze. The QR code wasn't for payments at all. Her eyes narrowed, and she grinned playfully. Oh, you could have just asked for my Weibo directly, sis. Her sister shoved her aside with a blank expression and said coldly, quit talking and pay me back. Without waiting for a response, she turned and went back to her room. Smiling, Guyang waved her sister off. Get some rest, sis, she called after her. Once inside her room, Gujin checked her phone and froze. A notification popped up, her sister had just added her to the family group chat. Without giving it much thought, she casually accepted. And that's when the chat exploded. Their younger brother immediately chimed in, curious, who's this? Guyang responded nonchalantly, it's our sister, duh. But before she could say more, her brother blew up. Why'd you add that country bumpkin? I only have one sister, and it's not her. If she messes with you again, I'll deal with her when I get back. Gujin's brows furrowed as she read the messages. Without a word, she left the chat. Meanwhile, Guyang was losing it. She wanted to strangle that clueless little brother, he was going to get her killed at this rate. He had no idea he'd just insulted someone way out of his league. And to top it off, he added, humph, at least she knows to back off. Guyang rolled her eyes. Oh, you sweet summer child. Just wait till you find out who you were mouthing off to. As she stewed, her phone buzzed with a notification, $200,000 had just been deposited into her account. Right after that, a message from Dad popped up. Here's a little gift from Dad to cheer you up. I heard about the Shui family calling off the engagement, don't worry, I'll get that engagement back for you. It's been a tough few days. Ignore the online drama, it'll blow over soon. You'll always be Daddy's little girl. And about that snake Ruan Yen, don't think for a second I'll let that slide. Guyang sighed, shaking her head. Say what you want about her parents' questionable morals, but one thing was clear, they doted on her even more than their biological daughter. Guyang remembered reading in the book that the original character's father eventually lost everything, his company went bankrupt, He lost his wife and son, and his entire family fell apart. Back then, she just thought, well, bad people get what they deserve. But now, with the way this version of Dad was treating her, it felt way too real. She couldn't just sit back and let things unravel like that. If she wanted to avoid that tragic ending, she figured it was time for Gu Yang, the chosen one, to step in and set her parents straight. So, she recorded a voice message for her dad. Forget about the Shui family engagement. I don't even like Shui duo. That family's nothing but schemers. The real issue is the trending gossip. You can't just ignore it. Things have blown up so much that Gu Corporation's stock is bound to take a hit. Someone's clearly fanning the flames. You should have the PR team issue a statement and apologize to clear my sister's name. Her dad listened to her long message in silence, sinking deep into thought. He remembered something old man Shui had once said, practically threatening him. Mr. Gu, I'd love for Yang Yang to marry into our family, but she's not your biological daughter. If you're willing to give up part of the market, though, well, since we'll be in-laws, it's all staying in the family, right? The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. He grabbed his phone and dialed Mr. Shui directly. Before Mr. Shui could even finish his greeting, Dad cut him off, yelling, "Who said we're in-laws? The engagement's off. We're not interested in marrying Yang Yang to your Shui duo. You think the Shui family's good enough for us? Please. A toad like him can keep dreaming about swans." Right after hanging up, he sent another voice message to her. "You were right. I'll handle the PR mess. But as for Ruan Yin, this won't end here. Tomorrow, we'll settle this face to face." Gu Yang smiled, satisfied with how quickly her dad was taking action. The next morning, the whole family headed to her cousin's place. Her cousin assumed they were there to visit Grandpa. Smiling, she greeted them, "Yang Yang, are you here to see Grandpa?" Gu Yang grinned. "Nope. We're here for you, cousin." Her cousin's eyes flickered with guilt, but she kept a calm front, inviting them inside. Her dad wasted no time. He slapped the test report onto the table and raised his voice. "This is the lab report for the skincare products Ruan Yin gave to Yang Yang. Turns out, there's excessive lead and mercury. Is this just a one-off, or are all Ruan Corp products like this?" Her uncle frowned as he read the report, while her aunt tried to smooth things over. Ruan Yan's always been careless. She must have grabbed the wrong sample by mistake. "Yang Yang, let's not blow this out of proportion, okay?" Gu Yang didn't let it slide. She tilted her head and asked, "A wrong sample? So, are you saying Ruan Corp's new product line has lead and mercury issues? Or is it everything they produce? Because if it's the latter, that's a pretty big deal." Her uncle and aunt exchanged uneasy glances, their faces stiffening. After a few seconds, her uncle sighed and spoke quietly to her dad. "Look, Gu Zhao, Ruan Yin made a mistake. I apologize on her behalf. We're family, and Yang Yang wasn't harmed. Can't we just let this go?" But her mom wasn't having it. Her voice cut through the room. "Does Ruan Yin not have a mouth of her own? Why are you apologizing for her? And why apologize to Gu Zhao? Ruan Yin needs to apologize to Yang Yang, publicly, on her social media." Her cousin's eyes widened in panic. She turned to her mom, tears welling up. "Mom, help me. If I apologize publicly, my whole career in the entertainment industry will be over." Her aunt tried again, softening her tone. "Yang Yang, we're all family here. There's no need to take things this far. You know how hard your cousins worked. If this gets out, it'll ruin her." Her mom wasn't budging. Her voice grew colder. "So that's it, huh? You're really going to shield Ruan Yin no matter what? Do you even know Ruan Corp's products have these problems? Do the other shareholders know about this? Abusing power for personal gain isn't something to take lightly." Ruan Yin clearly hadn't expected her whole family to come down so hard on her. Just as she opened her mouth to explain, her uncle suddenly slapped her across the face, his voice booming. "You disgrace. I can't believe you'd be so vicious. I'll beat some sense into you today if I have to." Gu Yang could tell her uncle wasn't stupid. He knew this mess couldn't be allowed to affect the company. Someone had to take the fall, and it was going to be Ruan Yen. With no way out, her uncle hit Ruan Yen again, repeating harshly, "You disgrace. I can't believe you'd stoop this low. I swear I'll beat the wickedness out of you." Ruan Yan's mom wasn't happy, but there was no denying they were in the wrong. Keeping her composure, she said calmly, Yang, we've already disciplined Ruan Yen for this. We're family, and you've always been understanding and kind. Let's just put this behind us, alright?" But her mom wasn't buying it. Her voice turned cold. "Oh, now you want to play the family card? Don't try to guilt-trip Yang into dropping this." Ruan Yan's eyes darted nervously. She quickly denied it. "No, I didn't do anything like that." But upstairs, Grandpa had heard enough. His voice cut through the tension as he shouted down, "Enough. If Ruan Yan's at fault, she'll face the consequences." Her uncle froze as Grandpa slowly made his way downstairs, clearly uneasy about how far Grandpa might take things. Grandpa eased into the couch, his face hard as stone. "If that whole fake heiress scandal hadn't blown up online, were you planning on keeping Xiaojin's identity a secret forever? Xiaojin is my real granddaughter. Gu Yang has been living under her name for long enough. It's time to set things right." Her mom instinctively argued, "How can you say that? Yang isn't even an adult yet, and she has hemophilia. How could she survive if she left the Gu family?" "Dad, why are you being so heartless?" Grandpa snapped at her mom, his face dark with disappointment. "Xiaojin suffered so much out there, and you never even thought to make it up to her. I don't know what kind of spell Gu Yang's put on you too." He cast an apologetic glance at Gu Jin and promised, "If your parents don't treat you well in the Gu family, come to the Ruan family. Grandpa will stand up for you." Gu Jin responded calmly, "Thank you, Grandpa," sensing the tension and wanting to ease it a little. But before she could say anything more, a cold laugh suddenly echoed from behind them. Oh right, Gu Yang had another cousin, Ruan Chu, the second daughter of the Ruan family. Before, Gu Yang original had helped Ruan Yen slander Ruan Chu, leading to vicious online attacks that pushed Ruan Chu into depression and forced her to quit the entertainment industry. Grandpa Ruan had always disliked Ruan Yen, and after learning of Gu Yang's involvement, his dislike extended to her as well. Gu Yang lived by one rule: win over every important person on the good side. She'd take it upon herself to help heal Ruan Chu's depression. Without wasting time, she walked over to Ruan Chu, picked up a teacup, and casually remarked, "I really envy you, cousin. Grandpa personally teaches you tea making, but honestly, this tastes kind of like the tea I randomly brewed." Ruan Chu shot her a cold glare, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Your green tea skills are impressive, I'll give you that." Grandpa's face darkened in anger. "Gu Yang, you've got quite the nerve. Let's see how good your tea really is if you think you can compare it to Xiao Chu's." Gu Yang smirked and suggested, "How about this, if my tea is better than cousin Chu's, Grandpa, you have to reward me." Grandpa scoffed, clearly thinking she was being ridiculous. There isn't a single socialite in Jin City who can match Xiao Chu's tea skills. Don't get ahead of yourself. Feigning surprise, Gu Yang innocently asked, "So, does that mean even Gu Jin isn't as good as cousin Chu?" Grandpa couldn't find a way to argue back, so in a fluster, he raised the stakes. "Fine. If your tea skills really are better than Xiao Chu's, I'll give you my prized Ishan clay tea set." Gu Yang grinned, knowing her little scheme had worked. She agreed without hesitation and playfully asked her sister, "Wanna make a bet too? If I lose, I'll play the piano for you every day." Gu Jin narrowed her eyes. "And if you win?" Gu Yang's eyes lit up. "I want your Jingyang Pavilion membership card." Her sister smirked and accepted the bet. They all sat down together, but Gu Yang knew the truth: her cousin Ruan Chu had been bottling everything up to avoid worrying Grandpa. In reality, she was severely depressed. Gu Yang figured the best way to help was through some guided hypnosis, using her own experience of online harassment from a while back. As she brewed tea, she began her subtle intervention. "You know," Gu Yang started casually, "I was cyberbullied the other day. Got flooded with nasty DMs and comments, but after I put my phone down, I just went on with life, played some piano, did my thing. Once everything got cleared up, the hate disappeared. Gu Yang glanced over at Ruan Chu. Sometimes, stuff happens. It's like catching a cold, it's not your fault. You get me, sis? Ruan Chu stared at her, a little stunned, and slowly nodded, without even realizing it. Gu Yang placed the tea in front of her with a gentle smile. Here, try it. The hypnosis ended naturally, leaving Ruan Chu feeling unexpectedly lighter. Even she was surprised by the sudden relief. Why did Gu Yang sound so comforting today? Did she hit her head or something? Grandpa took a sip of Gu Yang's tea and proceeded to compare. Gu Yang leaned in, cheekily asking, "So, Grandpa, whose tea tastes better, mine or Cousin Chu's?" Without thinking, Grandpa blurted out, "Yours, of course." Realizing what he said, he froze, but Gu Yang wasted no time. "Thanks, Grandpa. I'll take that Ishan clay tea set now." Gu Yang could tell that Grandpa was having a hard time parting with his tea set, and she felt a little guilty. But seeing that, she decided to stir the pot even more. "Don't feel bad, sis. Grandpa's not mad at you, if anything, it's my fault for being too awesome." Grandpa sighed, feeling even more frustrated by her smugness. But just as he was about to scold her, Gu Yang suddenly turned serious. Her smile faded as she lowered her voice and looked at her cousin. "Sis. I was wrong before. I really mean it. I'm sorry, Chu. I messed up." Ruan Chu blinked, startled by the unexpected shift. For a second, she wondered if Gu Yang had hit her head. A few beats passed before Ruan Chu crossed her arms and replied coolly, "I'm not accepting your apology. And I'm definitely not forgiving you. But, if you hand over that tea set as compensation, I might consider letting it slide." Gu Yang laughed. "Sure, I'll give it to you. But only if you agree to do one thing for me." Ruan Chu narrowed her eyes. "What is it?" Gu Yang's eyes sparkled mischievously. "Come back and do a reality show." She knew full well that Ruan Chu left the industry because of online harassment, and yet, she was asking her to return.